Cook for my entire family tomorrow. Start at 300 a.m. My daughter-in-law, Ashley, ordered, not looking up from her phone. Make sure everything is perfect this time. I agreed, then flew to Florida Keys without warning. 40 hungry relatives found an empty kitchen along with the surprise gift I left just for her. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. But let me back up and tell you how I ended up plotting the most satisfying revenge of my 64 years on this earth. It was Friday evening when Ashley cornered me in what used to be my own kitchen. Yes, you heard that right. 4 years ago, after my husband George died, I made the mistake of selling my beautiful 3-bedroom house and moving in with my son Michael and his wife. They convinced me it would be better for everyone. I could help with the kids, contribute to expenses, and we'd be one big, happy family. What a joke that turned out to be. Ellen, Ashley said, using my full name like I was a misbehaving child. The family reunion is tomorrow. 43 people are coming and I need everything ready by noon. She finally looked up, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her phone case. That means you start cooking at 3 in the morning. No excuses this time. The words hit me like a slap. No excuses this time. As if I'd somehow failed her before when I'd been cooking and cleaning and babysitting and basically running her household for 4 years while she played social media influencer. Ashley, I said, carefully, I'm 64 years old. Starting at 300 a.m. seems a bit what? Her voice turned sharp. Too much work for someone who doesn't pay rent, someone who eats our food and uses our electricity. She stepped closer, and I could smell her expensive perfume. Face it, Ellen. This is the least you can do to earn your keep. Something cold and hard settled in my chest. Not anger. I'd moved past anger months ago. This was something else entirely. This was clarity. Of course, I said, sweetly. I'll start at 3:00 a.m. sharp. She smiled then. That fake smile she wore like makeup. Good. And Ellen, don't mess up the timing like you did at Easter. People actually matter at this one. After she click-clacked away in her designer heels, I stood in that kitchen, my kitchen bought with my money, and smiled for the first time in weeks, because Ashley had just made a fatal error. She'd pushed the wrong woman too far. I pulled out my phone and opened the travel app. Florida Keys looked lovely this time of year, and their next flight to Miami left at 600 a.m. Saturday morning. Perfect timing, really. You might think I'm crazy for making such a dramatic decision, but let me paint you the full picture of my life since moving in with Michael and Ashley. When George died, I was drowning in grief and medical bills. The cancer treatment had drained our savings, and the house felt impossibly empty without him. When Michael suggested I sell and move in with them, it seemed like a lifeline. Mom, we need you, he'd said, holding my hands across the kitchen table. The kids need their grandmother close, and honestly, we could use help with the mortgage. So I sold my house, the house George and I had bought as newlyweds, where we'd raised Michael, where every room held 35 years of memories. I gave them $220,000 from the sale to pay off their mortgage completely. I thought I was investing in family. What I actually bought was 4 years of servitude. It started small. Could I pick up the kids from school since I wasn't working? Could I cook dinner since I was home anyway? Could I help with laundry since the kids were so busy with activities? Before I knew it, I'd become their live-in housekeeper, chef, and babysitter. While Ashley spent her days at the spa or shopping with friends, I was scrubbing toilets and ironing Michael's shirts. When they went on vacations funded by money I'd helped them save, I stayed home to watch the house. The worst part wasn't the work. It was the complete lack of respect. Like when Ashley redecorated the guest room, my room, without asking, throwing away the photos of George I'd carefully arranged. It looked so cluttered, she'd said with a shrug. Or when she started introducing me to her friends as Michael's mother. She helps out around the house, as if I were hired help instead of family. Or last month when I overheard her on the phone with her sister. I don't know how much longer I can deal with her. She's just so old-fashioned. Everything's a production. I can't wait until we can afford to put her in one of those nice senior communities. Standing in my bedroom that Friday night, I methodically packed a suitcase. Not everything. I didn't want to tip them off, just enough for a week in paradise. As I folded my favorite sundress, the one Ashley had criticized as too bright for someone your age, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Freedom. I booked a suite at the Ocean Breeze Resort, Ocean View Spa services included. The cost would have horrified the old Ellen, the one who clipped coupons and worried about every penny, but that Ellen was about to disappear forever. At 2:30 a.m., I tiptoed downstairs and left my masterpiece on the kitchen counter. Not a grocery list or cooking instructions, something much more interesting. Then I called a taxi and slipped out into the pre-dawn darkness. By the time Ashley woke up expecting to smell bacon frying, I was already 30,000 more feet over the Atlantic Ocean, sipping champagne and watching the sunrise. The look on her face when she discovered what I'd left behind would be worth every penny. The taxi driver was chatty despite the early hour. "Airport," he confirmed as I settled into the back seat with my single suitcase. "Yes, please, and there's an extra 20 if you can get me there quickly." He glanced at me in the rearview mirror, running away from home, are we? Something like that. I smiled, watching my son's house disappear into the darkness. The house I'd helped them keep where I'd spent 4 years shrinking myself smaller and smaller to fit into their idea of a grateful mother. At the airport, I felt like a different person. Maybe it was the early morning energy, or maybe it was the delicious secret burning in my chest, but I practically floated through security. The TSA agent looked at my ID twice. "Florida Keys business or pleasure, ma'am?" "Pure pleasure," I said, and meant it. And the flight was only half full, which meant I could spread out and really savor what was happening. As we climbed above the clouds, I imagined Ashley's morning routine. She'd stumble downstairs around 8, expecting to find me elbow-deep in preparation for her precious family reunion. Instead, she'd find my letter. Oh, that letter! I'd spent 3 hours crafting it the night before, making sure every word was perfect. Not cruel. I'm not a cruel person, but honest in a way I'd never been allowed to be. I'd started simply, "Dear Ashley, I won't be cooking for your family reunion today. In fact, I won't be cooking anything ever again." Then I detailed exactly what I'd contributed to their household over the past 4 years. Not just the $220,000 to pay off their mortgage, but everything else, the groceries I'd bought, the utilities I'd helped with the repairs. I'd paid for the vacations I'd funded by lending them money that was never repaid. The total was staggering, even to me, $190,000. But the real gift was the final paragraph. "I consider this debt forgiven in exchange for 4 years of disrespect, ingratitude, and emotional abuse. Where even now, don't bother calling. I'll be impossible to reach for the foreseeable future. P.S. There's bologna in the fridge for sandwiches. You remember how to make those, right? Ma'am, would you like a complimentary beverage?" The flight attendant's voice interrupted my daydream. "Champagne, please. I'm celebrating. Special occasion." I thought about Ashley discovering my letter, about 43 relatives arriving to an empty kitchen, about Michael having to explain to his family why Grandma wasn't there. You could say that I just got my life back. The champagne was terrible airline champagne, but it tasted like victory. As we flew west toward the sun, I closed my eyes and imagined the chaos unfolding at home. Ashley frantically calling grocery stores, trying to find a caterer who could handle 43 people with 4 hours' notice. Michael realizing that his mother, reliable, predictable Ellen, had finally reached her breaking point. By now, they'd probably tried calling my cell phone, but I turned it off right after takeoff. Whatever emergency they thought this was. It wasn't my emergency anymore. For the first time in 4 years, someone else would have to figure it out. The Ocean Breeze Resort was everything the website had promised and more. Palm trees swayed in the trade winds. The ocean stretched endlessly blue, and nobody knew me as anything other than Ms. Sullivan, a woman on vacation. "First time in Florida Keys?" asked the cheerful desk clerk as she handed me my room keys. "First time doing anything just for myself in a very long time," I admitted. She smiled knowingly. "Well, you picked the perfect place for it. The spa is amazing. The restaurants are world-class, and if you want adventure, we can arrange everything from helicopter tours to swim with dolphins experiences." My suite was on the 7th floor with a balcony overlooking the ocean. As I unpacked my small suitcase, I tried to imagine what was happening 3,000 miles away. It would be late morning now in Boston. The relatives would start arriving soon, expecting to find tables groaning under my homemade specialties. Instead, they'd find chaos. I should have felt guilty. The old Ellen would have been consumed with worry about disappointing people, about causing problems, about what everyone would think. But as I changed into the new swimsuit I'd hastily bought at the airport gift shop, I felt only satisfaction. They'd taken my generosity for granted for 4 years. They treated me like hired help who should be grateful for room and board in exchange for endless labor. Well, now they could see what life was like without their personal servant. My phone had been buzzing incessantly since I'd turned it back on. 17 missed calls from Michael, 12 from Ashley, and a string of increasingly frantic text messages. I scrolled through them while sipping a Mai Tai on my balcony. "Ashley, where are you, Michael? Mom, call me immediately. There's been a misunderstanding. Ashley, this is not funny. Ellen, people are coming. Michael. Mom, please, whatever's wrong, we can fix it. Ashley. I can't believe you would do this to me. To us." The last message was from my granddaughter, Hannah. "Grandma, where are you? Mom is freaking out, and Dad looks like he might cry. Are you okay?" That one tugged at my heart. Hannah was 17, old enough to understand that families could be complicated, but young enough to still worry about her grandmother's welfare. I typed back quickly. "I'm perfectly fine, sweetheart. Just taking a little vacation. Love you." Then I turned the phone off again. A waiter appeared at my elbow. "Another Mai Tai, ma'am." "Why not? I'm celebrating my liberation." He laughed. "Divorce, something like that." As the afternoon sun warmed my face, I thought about the conversation that would be happening in my son's kitchen right now. Michael trying to salvage the family reunion. Ashley ranting about my selfish behavior. Relatives wondering where the food was. Let them figure it out. Let them call restaurants and grocery stores and try to piece together a meal for 43 people. Let them realize exactly how much work I'd been doing all these years while they took it for granted. Tomorrow, I'd start thinking about what came next. But today, I was just going to enjoy watching the waves and feeling the freedom of having absolutely no responsibilities except deciding whether to order room service or try one of the resort's restaurants. For the first time in 4 years, the only person I had to take care of was myself. I finally turned my phone back on Sunday morning after 2 glorious days of spa treatments, room service, and blissful silence. The message count made me laugh out loud. 37 missed calls and 63 text messages. Most were from Michael and Ashley, but there were others too. My sister Ruth from Ohio, confused about why she'd gotten a call, asking if she knew where I was. Several neighbors wondering if I was all right. Even my old friend Helen from book club, who'd apparently been recruited in the search effort. But it was the voicemail from my grandson Ethan that finally made me call back. "Grandma, this is Ethan. I know you're probably mad at Mom, and honestly, I don't blame you. She made Dad call everyone in your address book looking for you. The whole family reunion was a disaster. They ended up ordering pizza. Uncle Tom said he's never seen anything so disorganized in his life. But seriously, are you okay, sweet Ethan? At 15, he was becoming the kind of young man who noticed when someone was hurting, unlike his parents, who'd been too busy taking advantage of my kindness to notice they were killing my spirit. I called Michael first. "Mom!" His voice was a mixture of relief and anger. "Where the hell are you? Do you have any idea what you've put us through?" "I'm exactly where I told you I'd be," I said calmly. "Impossible to reach for the foreseeable future." "This isn't funny, Mom. Ashley has been crying for 2 days. The family reunion was ruined. Aunt Linda asked me 15 times where you were, and I had to lie and say you were sick." "Why did you lie?" "Because I didn't want to tell 43 relatives that my mother had apparently lost her mind." I sipped my coffee. Real Kona coffee, not the generic brand Ashley bought to save money, and watched a pot of whales breach in the distance. "Michael, did you read my letter?" A pause. "Mom, you were clearly upset about something. Did you read it?" Another pause, longer this time. "Yes, all of it, including the part where I listed every cent I've contributed to your household over the past 4 years." Silence, because I have to tell you, son, seeing it all written down was quite eye-opening. $190 to $1,000. That's not counting the unpaid labor, of course. "Mom, we never asked you to keep track of—" "No, you never asked me to keep track because you never intended to pay me back. You saw me as a convenient ATM who also happened to cook and clean." "That's not fair. You're family. Family helps each other." "You're absolutely right," I said. "Family does help each other, which is why I'm helping you learn to be independent. Consider it a gift." I could hear Ashley's voice in the background, shrill and demanding. Michael covered the phone, but I caught fragments. "Tell her she has to come back. This is ridiculous. She's being selfish." When he came back on the line, his voice was strained. "Mom, whatever this is about, we can work it out. Just come home." "Home?" I laughed, and it felt good. "Michael, I don't have a home there. I have a room in your house where I'm expected to be grateful for the privilege of working myself to death for people who don't respect me. That's not—" "We do respect you. Your wife called me old-fashioned and cluttered. She redecorated my room without asking and threw away my pictures of your father. She talks about putting me in a senior community like I'm a burden she can't wait to dump." Another long silence. I didn't know she said those things. "Of course you didn't, because you stopped seeing me as a person a long time ago. I became furniture that occasionally cooked dinner. The truth of it hung between us, painful and undeniable." That afternoon, I was lounging by the pool when my phone rang again. This time, it was Ashley, and for some reason, I decided to answer. "Ellen." Her voice was ice cold. "I think we need to have a conversation about your little tantrum." "Tantrum?" I kept my voice pleasant. "I prefer to think of it as a well-deserved vacation. Do you have any idea what you've done to this family? What you've done to me?" I took a sip of my pineapple smoothie. "I imagine you had to actually work for a weekend. How novel." "I had to order pizza for 43 people. My entire extended family thinks I'm incompetent because my mother-in-law abandoned us. I prefer the term resigned my position. This isn't a joke, Ellen. I called caterers, restaurants, even the grocery store deli. Nobody could help with 4 hours' notice. I was humiliated. Now you know how I felt for 4 years." The line went quiet. Then Ashley's voice came back. Different now. Calculating. "Fine. You want to play games?" "Let's play. You seem to forget that you don't own that house anymore." "Ellen, we do, and if you don't come back and apologize for this ridiculous behavior, you might find yourself without a place to live." Something hot and dangerous flared in my chest. "Are you threatening to evict me?" "I'm reminding you of reality. You sold your house? Remember, you gave us all that money. You're dependent on us now, and dependent people don't get to throw tantrums." I stood up suddenly, too agitated to sit. Around the pool, other guests were enjoying their vacations, blissfully unaware that I was having the most important conversation of my recent life. Ashley, there's something you don't know about that money I gave you. What are you talking about? The $220,000 I used to pay off your mortgage. That wasn't from the sale of my house. Silence. That money came from a separate account, an inheritance George left me that I never told anyone about. The house sale money that's sitting in investments earning interest. I could practically hear her brain working, trying to understand what this meant. You see, George was a very careful man. He knew that large financial transactions within families could cause problems later. So he insisted everything be properly documented. Legal loan agreements, proper interest rates, everything above board. I don't understand. It means, dear Ashley, that I'm not dependent on you at all. In fact, it's quite the opposite. That mortgage-free house you're living in, I can call in that loan anytime I want. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. You're lying. Am I? Check the paperwork. It's all there in black and white. A personal loan from Ellen Sullivan to Michael and Ashley Sullivan secured by the property at 1520 Oakwood Drive. I even charged you interest, very reasonable interest, mind you. George would be proud of my business sense. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. What do you want? I looked out at the ocean, at the endless blue horizon that represented all the possibilities I'd forgotten existed. What I want is to finish my vacation in peace. What you want is to figure out how you're going to run your household without me. Because, Ashley, I'm not coming back. This time, I hung up first. The call from Michael came at 6:00 a.m., Tuesday morning, Florida Keys time, which meant it was 11:00 a.m. in Boston, and he'd clearly been stewing over my conversation with Ashley for the better part of 2 days. Mom, we need to talk. His voice was different, tired, defeated in a way I'd never heard before. Good morning to you too, son. Ashley told me about the loan paperwork about the money. Is it true I stretched in my luxurious hotel bed watching the sunrise paint the ocean gold? Every word. Why didn't you tell me? Because you never asked where the money came from. You just took it and assumed I was giving it out of some maternal obligation to bankrupt myself for your benefit. A long pause. That's fair. Michael, your father spent the last year of his life making sure I'd be protected. He set up accounts, wrote legal documents, even recorded video messages explaining his wishes. He knew that grief makes people vulnerable, and he was determined that no one would take advantage of me, not even his own son. The pain in his voice almost broke my resolve. Almost. Especially not his own son. George knew how charming you could be when you wanted something. Jesus, Mom. What kind of son does that make me, the kind who lost his way but still has time to find it again? I heard him take a shaky breath. She's been saying things about you about the situation. I think I've been hearing what I wanted to hear instead of what was actually happening. And what do you think was actually happening? I think we turned you into a servant in your own home. I think we took your money and your work and your love and gave you nothing back but a place to sleep. There it was. The truth finally spoken out loud. Michael, for 4 years I've been waiting for you to see me, really see me, not as a convenient solution to your problems, but as your mother who deserved respect and kindness. I'm seeing you now, Mom, and I'm ashamed of what I see. Good. Shame means you still have a conscience. Are you ever coming home? I looked around my suite at the fresh flowers the housekeeping staff brought daily at the view that never got old. I don't know yet, but Michael, if I do, things will be very different. Whatever you want, whatever you need, we'll make it right. It's not about what I want from you anymore. It's about what you need to do for yourselves. You and Ashley need to figure out how to run your own lives without someone else doing the heavy lifting. After I hung up, I sat on my balcony for a long time thinking about forgiveness and fresh starts and whether some bridges could be rebuilt stronger than before. "You look like a woman with a story," said the man at the neighboring table as I waited for my lunch at the resort's oceanfront restaurant. He was about my age, silver-haired, with kind eyes and an easy smile. Handsome in that weathered, outdoorsy way that suggested a life well lived. "Don't we all?" I replied, but I was smiling. "Paul Anderson," he said, extending his hand. "Retired teacher from Florida Keys, and you're either on the world's most relaxing vacation or running away from something Ellen Sullivan. And it's definitely both." He laughed. "Mind if I join you? I hate eating alone, and you look like excellent company." Over lunch, I found myself telling him the whole story. Not just the recent drama, but everything. The 40 years of marriage to George, raising Michael, the slow erosion of my independence after George's death, the 4 years of indentured servitude, and finally, the great escape. Paul listened without judgment, asking thoughtful questions, and occasionally shaking his head in sympathy. "So, you're a fugitive from your own family?" he said when I finished. "More like a refugee. And what's the plan now? Besides enjoying paradise indefinitely, honestly, I don't know. For the first time in my adult life, I get to figure out what I want instead of what everyone else needs from me." That's terrifying and wonderful at the same time. Exactly. He leaned back in his chair, studying me with those intelligent eyes. "Can I make a suggestion, please? Don't go back until you're sure you want to, not because you feel obligated to. You've earned the right to be selfish." That evening, Paul took me to a local restaurant his daughter had recommended. Not touristy, just good food and the kind of atmosphere where locals gathered to talk story, as he called it. "I moved here after my wife died," he explained over fresh coffee. "Thought I'd stay 6 months, get my head straight, then go back to the mainland. That was 8 years ago. Do you regret it?" Best decision I ever made. I discovered who I was when I wasn't trying to be who everyone else needed me to be. As we walked along the beach afterward, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Not just attraction, though there was definitely that, but possibility. The possibility that my life wasn't over at 64, that there were still adventures to be had, connections to be made. Ellen Paul said as we reached my hotel, "I hope this doesn't sound too forward, but would you like to have dinner tomorrow? There's a sunset cruise I think you'd enjoy." I thought about the old Ellen, who would have found 17 reasons why it wasn't appropriate to date so soon after running away from home. I'd love that, I said, while I was falling in love with both the Florida Keys and a man named Paul. My former life was apparently imploding spectacularly. The full story came from Hannah, my granddaughter, who called Wednesday evening in tears. "Grandma, everything's falling apart here. What's happening, sweetheart?" "Mom and Dad had this huge fight. I mean, huge. Dad found out some stuff about Mom that he didn't know before." I settled into my chair, sensing this was going to be a long conversation. "What kind of stuff?" "Remember how Mom always said she couldn't work because someone needed to be home with us kids? Well, Ethan and I found out she's been working part-time at this boutique for 3 years and getting paid cash so Dad wouldn't know." "Interesting. Why didn't your father know? Because she told him the money came from you. Like when she bought that expensive purse last month, she said you gave her money for it, but you were already gone by then, so Ethan and I knew she was lying." My blood went cold. "Hannah, how much money did she tell your father came from me?" "I don't know exactly, but I heard them fighting about it. Dad said he thought Mom was being too hard on you because you were being so generous. He felt guilty that you were spending your savings on us." The scope of Ashley's manipulation was breathtaking. She'd been stealing from her own family while making my son believe I was voluntarily impoverishing myself for their benefit. "There's more, Grandma. Dad hired someone to look into the house loan thing you talked about. And it turns out Mom knew about it the whole time. She had copies of all the paperwork hidden in her closet." "Oh, Hannah. Dad moved out yesterday. He's staying at Uncle Tom's, and Mom keeps crying and saying, "It's all your fault that you ruined everything by leaving." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of my son's broken marriage, even though I knew I wasn't responsible for Ashley's choices. "Sweetheart, I need you to listen to me carefully. None of this is your fault or Ethan's fault, and it's not really my fault either. Your parents need to work out their problems themselves. But are you ever coming home? Dad keeps asking, and I think he really needs you right now." That tugged at my heart. But I thought about Paul, about the life I was building here, about the woman I was becoming. "I don't know yet, Hannah, but no matter what happens between your parents, you and Ethan are always welcome to visit me here. In fact, I'd love that. Really. Even with everything that's happened, especially because of everything that's happened. You're my grandchildren. That doesn't change just because the adults in your family have made a mess of things." After we hung up, I sat looking out at the ocean for a long time. Paul found me there an hour later, still processing the news. "Penny, for your thoughts. My daughter-in-law has been systematically lying to my son for years, and their marriage just imploded. I should feel vindicated, but mostly, I just feel sad. Sad for your son. Sad for all of them. Even her in a way. She must have been pretty miserable to go to such lengths to deceive everyone." Paul sat beside me, taking my hand. "You know what I think. What I think you're exactly where you need to be." The call that changed everything came Thursday morning from a lawyer in Boston whose name I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Sullivan, this is Daniel Brooks from Walsh Patterson and Associates. I represented your late husband George in some legal matters. I'm calling because recent events have triggered certain provisions in his estate planning." I sat up straighter. "What kind of provisions, Mrs. Sullivan? Your husband anticipated that you might face pressure from family members regarding financial matters after his death. He established what we call a protection protocol that activates under specific circumstances." "I don't understand." "One of those circumstances is if you're forced to live away from your primary residence for more than 30 consecutive days due to financial coercion or emotional abuse by family members." My heart started beating faster, "And you've been in the Florida Keys for 8 days. If you choose to stay there for 22 more days, a trust worth $1.2 million will be released to you along with a property George purchased in your name that you don't know about." I nearly dropped the phone. "What property? A beachfront condo in Key West, fully paid for, held in trust with instructions that only be revealed if you needed an escape route." "Your husband was very thorough in protecting your interests, Mrs. Sullivan." The rooms seemed to spin around me. George had been planning for this scenario before he died. He'd known somehow that I might need saving from our own son. "Daniel Brooks, are you telling me that my husband bought me a house in Key West without telling me? He bought you freedom, Mrs. Sullivan. The house was just the delivery method." After the lawyer hung up, I sat staring at the ocean trying to process what I'd learned. George had been more worried about my future than I'd realized. The business he'd sold in his final years had been more valuable than he'd let on, and he'd used those funds to create this safety net. The trust money was substantial enough that I'd never have to worry about finances again. The condo meant I could stay in Key West permanently if I chose to. But more than that, it meant George had loved me enough to plan for a future where I might need to choose myself over a family obligation. My phone rang again. This time, it was Michael. "Mom, I need to tell you something about Ashley. I already know about the boutique job and the lying about money. There's more." His voice was heavy with pain. "I found out she's been in contact with a lawyer about having you declared incompetent. She wanted to get power of attorney over your assets." The final piece clicked into place. Ashley hadn't just been using me as free labor. She'd been planning to take complete control of my life and finances. "Michael, I need you to listen very carefully. I'm going to tell you something that will change how you see everything that's happened." I told him about the lawyer's call, about George's protection protocol, about the trust, and the condo about how his father had seen this exact scenario coming and had moved to protect me. When I finished, Michael was quiet for a long time. Dad knew he finally said somehow he knew this would happen. Your father was a very wise man. Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I didn't see what was happening. I'm sorry I let her treat you that way. I'm sorry I became the kind of man Dad felt he needed to protect you from. For the first time since this whole ordeal began, I cried. 3 months later, I was standing on the lanai of my new condo in Key West, watching Paul tend to the garden he'd insisted on planting for me. The plumeria should bloom in spring, he called out, wiping his hands on his jeans. And the mango tree will give fruit in a few years. Planning to stick around that long, I teased. He straightened up, fixing me with that smile that still made my heart skip. Ellen Sullivan, I plan to stick around until you get tired of me, and maybe not even then. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. The decision to stay in the Florida Keys hadn't been difficult once I'd seen the condo George had chosen for me. It was perfect, small enough to be manageable, but with room for guests. The lanai overlooked the ocean, and there was a community garden where I'd already made several friends. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Hannah. Grandma, guess what Dad bought me and Ethan tickets to visit you for spring break? That's wonderful. Sweetheart, I can't wait to show you around. And Grandma Dad wanted me to tell you something. He and Mom are getting divorced, but it's going to be okay. He's happier now. We all are, actually. After we hung up, I reflected on how much had changed. Michael was indeed happier. He'd moved into a smaller apartment and was learning to cook for himself and the kids. He'd also started therapy, trying to understand how he'd lost his way so completely. Ashley had moved back to her parents' house and was working full-time for the first time in years. The divorce was proceeding amicably enough, though she'd tried one last time to contest George's trust, claiming I'd manipulated him. That lawsuit had lasted exactly 1 week before her lawyer advised her to drop it. The best part was that my relationship with my grandchildren had actually grown stronger. Without the toxic dynamic between their parents, we could simply love each other without all the underlying tension. You look happy, Paul observed, joining me on the lanai with 2 cups of coffee. I am happy. For the first time in years, I'm exactly where I want to be, with people who value me for who I am, not what I can do for them. Any regrets about the dramatic exit I thought about that fateful Friday morning when I'd chosen freedom over servitude? When I'd finally said no to being taken for granted, none whatsoever. Sometimes you have to burn the bridge to find out you can fly. Paul raised his coffee cup in a toast. To flying then. To flying, I agreed. As the sun set over the Atlantic, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I thought about how many sunsets I'd missed during those 4 years of trying to be indispensable to people who didn't appreciate me. I'd wasted so much time trying to earn love. That was my right to receive freely. But I wasn't wasted time anymore. At 64, I'd learned that it's never too late to choose yourself, never too late to demand respect, and never too late to start over. The best revenge I'd discovered wasn't making them suffer. It was making myself happy. And I was very, very happy indeed. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.